Hey everybody, what's happening? Welcome back for another episode of Ranching Reboot. For the podcast this week, we packed up the studio and headed over to Severy, Kansas to meet with my friends Gail Fuller and his lovely companion Lynette. After some tacos, we sat down on some comfy couches by the fire and I hit the record button and this is what happened. Today we're going to talk about the Fuller Field School, what it's like taking over a retired organic farm and trying to rebuild the soil from scratch, and Lynette talks about her enterprises with Airbnb and farm stays. One of the things she mentions that people are asking for a lot is stargazing. And guess what, guys? Most of us live far enough outside of the city lights, or our ranches are out there. We can offer stargazing experiences. So check that out if that might be something you're interested in. Check out landtrust.com or click the link in the description. Hey, you want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money. All in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. And when you want to take your conversations with fans to the next level, Q&A and polls are the best way to get them talking. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. Best of all, it's totally free with no catch. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started today.
Portable setup, at a table with a mic, with the professional microphones. It's just I'm trying a different travel kit. This one's a lot less junk than I've been carrying around. So
Nice.
Have you talked to Aaron about doing this at No Till on the Plains?
talked to him yesterday.
On the road, yes.
Yeah.
And he
Didn't
said
he-
he'd been to visit you.
Yeah,
Yeah, he'd come
because didn't we talk about it when he was here?
He said he'd just been to have lunch or dinner with you guys, and then we talked to him like the next afternoon.
Because I thought somebody said they was going to have you just come and talk to speakers.
I think that's kind of what Aaron's.
Yeah.
Well, I thought we had that conversation. Maybe I'd suggest it to him. I don't know. Because you did that at Soil Health Unit. I think, doing some live stuff like that should be good for business.
We're going to do
For
that at
both of
Soil
you.
Health U, and then a week later we're going to turn around and do the same thing at No Till on the Plains. Going to have space to be able to meet people. Maybe have a little area on the trade show floor. Not real sure, but at both Soil Health U and No Till, they're going to let me have use of a room to where I can take people and we can do short recordings, get some thoughts down. Not necessarily do like one of these full 2-hour set downs, because that's probably a lot at a conference, but.
I'm not sure there's any value or if it'd even be possible, but I have a friend coming from Iraq.
Tell me more.
He's the retiring Minister of Agriculture.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
We will.
cool.
Yes. I definitely want to speak
Now,
to that.
he was here in 11 and spoke. I mean, we couldn't have a conversation. He knew enough English just to get him in trouble.
Okay.
So there was an interpreter. But we keep in touch on Facebook, and he is now sending me Facebook posts that are 3 or 4 paragraphs. So I'm guessing his English is getting better. Maybe he's learning. I don't know. Or maybe he's just using some translate button on Facebook that he never used in the past.
Well, another couple of months, I think ChatGPT will be able to do real-time translation from any language to any language.
And if he isn't speaking English, he'll have an interpreter with him, but that kind of makes a podcast a mess. So but
Yeah, we'll definitely have to work on that.
he's a very interesting guy, and he's spent his career trying to feed a starving nation.
That's crazy.
In
And
a starving nation in a desert.
in a desert. They do have water. He said that, the one advantage, he says they have water, but they have and they can't leave carbon. His problem with cover crops is, he goes, farmers can't leave 1 ounce of anything on the field after harvest, or the city people steal it for firewood.
Wow.
So stalks, residue. It's a mountain they have to climb.
Wow. What a problem to not even consider.
Yeah. You always think that the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. It's not greener on that side of the fence.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
he made a comment that would be very relative today with what's going on. At dinner that night, he said, the biggest problem facing my people today is at the end of the day, there's not enough protein on our plates to keep our brains functioning properly.
Wow. Wow. No, and I guess that can lead into that leads into everything. If soil, what is it you say, Gail? If soil's not the answer,
Soil is the answer. What's the question?
right?
Is the question.
You know, it all circles back to healthy soil to grow
Yeah.
healthy food, healthy nutrient dense food.
Yep.
And I just can't help but think, you know, we just sat down for a meal of tacos just a few minutes ago. And I was thinking, man, this is just wonderful food. It's wonderful nutrient dense food that we know where it came from. Like
Mhm.
everything in that meal, we know where it came from. We know who grew it. We know how it was processed. And we were talking at dinner that the last decade that we were all skinny was the 70s. And what happened in the 70s? We started to get more processed food. We had microwaves. Everybody had to get busier, and you know, two members of the family working full-time jobs to support everything. And now we don't have time to run a garden. We don't have time to cook home cooked good meals. And well, let's just get it in a box. But and it's kind of like preaching to the choir, right, Gail? So what do you tell me what your thoughts are?
I agree. Yeah. This started a lot of it really started in the 70s. I think the other thing that happened in the 70s is when we really started to ramp up chemical use in agriculture. It was just one other thing. And, the misinformation campaign of fat is bad for you, and then red meat is bad for you, eggs are bad for you, and kind of pushed us into this. So I think that's where a lot of it started. And I think, we're so blessed, the meal we just shared. I think part of the glamour of living small town or rural America, it's not hard to find a farmer. I think about, living in the middle of Kansas City or Detroit or New York, how difficult it would be to find this healthy, nutrient-dense meal and know where it came from. So we're blessed to be here.
That's a great point. So I was at Regenerate several weeks ago, and one of the speakers there that I had a chance to talk to is a gentleman named Bobby Smith, I think. Anyway, he runs a place called the Metro Atlanta Urban Farm. And his farm, it's in Atlanta, downtown. He said it's 5 minutes from downtown, 10 minutes from the airport. And listening to him talk, what you said made me think of that. Like, there are some of us producers out here, we kind of get like, why is this all so hard? We just want to give people food, right? But the problem is when you get 1 million people in a small area, and how do you get enough food in for 1 million people in a city like Atlanta that's all local and fresh and raised by people that care? Then it becomes a monumental problem. And I don't know. I hope Bobby will return my email so I can get him on a podcast and talk about what he does. And he had some really great stories about changing people's lives with food. Like, one of the reasons that he does what he does is he wants to be able to grow food to give away to the poor and homeless communities there in Atlanta. I think it's pretty cool.
Have you seen the TED Talk guerrilla farmer?
I haven't.
Ron Franklin. Is that his name? He's in LA, South LA. And he's been doing similar stuff for a long time in LA with vacant lots. The city came after him, even though he was required to maintain his lot in front of his house. So he planted it to food. And the city said, no, you can't do that. He goes, well, I'm maintaining it and I'm giving the food away.
Did they make him quit?
They tried. And then we watched Common Ground Friday night, and I thought the most intriguing farmer to me, maybe it's because it was out of my league, is the gal in New York. And if I understood it correctly, she's going around to homeowners and renting their lawn. I don't think she's paying to rent it. They're giving her their lawn, and she brings in a farmer and soil and makes raised beds or whatever she wants to do and plants it to a garden, and then it's all given away to underserved.
It's all taken to a community.
Like a food hub.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
Exactly. I mean, how many thousands of acres are there in New York or Atlanta that,
or Kansas City?
I've seen somebody that's doing that with kind of like what you're talking about. So there's a lot of people that want their yards landscaped, and they're willing to pay to have their yards landscaped. But a lot of those people don't even know that it's an option to landscape with food. And what a cool business idea.
But Emporia, I don't know if you've been up Commercial Street in Emporia the last few years, but they've got these little garden plots on each corner of Main Street now. There's trees and flowers. So, I think you actually know her, Marcia Lawrence.
Yes.
Grew up in your country.
Yep.
So she was in charge of one outside when she had the bookstore. She goes, well, great, I'm going to plant mine to food. Nope, you're not. City wouldn't let her.
Wow.
And you got to wonder why. I mean, maybe it's because trees with fruit on them, the fruit falls off, rots, it attracts.
Yep.
It attracts rats or crows or
I can
whatever.
see
all kinds of reasons.
Liability
you could come up
issues. Yep.
All kinds.
Picking a green bean off the plant and claiming you got sick and sue the city.
All kinds of reasons. There's all kinds of excuses to not expect people to be responsible for their own.
Most of them you can go back to a lawyer, figure out where the problem is.
Absolutely.
It isn't the city and it's not the person growing the food. It's usually a lawyer. Probably don't want to add that in.
A lawyer with an interesting concept of personal responsibility when it comes to choices. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to say I think we'd all be better off if it wasn't for lawyers, but I think the world might be a vastly simpler place. Well, something I've wanted to know for a long time is, how did you guys meet?
Good question. We always knew each other because we grew up in 4-H. So we always knew each other because we were in the same county. And the county 4-H program was really what brought all the rural kids together across the entire county, which the county is relatively large. So it was kind of nice. So there were lots of events like that. So I always knew who he was, but we really didn't. He was older than I was. And so I had I wasn't really interested. But later in life, we became competitors. Our children showed pigs in 4-H against each other, and I guess I kind of took
cattle.
Yeah, but mostly a pig competition was the one that I was more interested in. So somebody told me one time, keep your competition close. So I guess I took that one literally, I think is what I did. So our kids showed together, and then I just kind of he's kind of interesting. Yeah, I kind of enjoyed visiting with him, and it's kind of an interesting character, which I'd never really talked to him. So
even in high school, I hung out with your two older brothers. I mean, plenty of parties, but still, I mean, she was enough younger. He was the
old guy then, right?
He was just the old guy. I wasn't really interested.
I have a similar story about Brian and thinking he was the old guy when I first met him.
Exactly. You're just
we'll tell that one another day.
Oh no, we'll be having that one. Yeah. But yeah, it was one of those kinds of things. So.
So you guys grew up in the same community?
We did. We grew up in the same community.
No, not really.
No.
She grew up at Nopi, small Catholic town south of Emporia, and I grew up just north of Emporia. So yeah, we were in the same county and showed at the same fair and all that, but our families didn't really intertwine. It's not like we hung out at ice cream socials and anything outside of 4-H.
So so we kind of got to know each other, and then of course divorce always brings people together. And so had that similar experience also. 18 years later.
18 years, huh?
18 years later.
18 years later, we're still together, and I bet that was never a prediction.
And I bet it's been a fun ride. So the last time we really had a chance to catch up was just over a year ago when I came over for your field school. But sorry I couldn't make it over this year. Had a couple other things going on. How'd the field school go this year?
We did 2 this year, both fantastic speakers. We're just so blessed, to get the people to come that we do. The Springfield School, we had a focus on water and economy, and we had Dee Dee Purshouse did a segment on the water cycle, large and small, and she's just, I think outside of Walter Yana, she's the next best speaker on the planet when it comes to water. Of course, she trains under Walter. So, and then we had Laura Lennick and Abe Collins, and both of those are really fantastic, not just with their knowledge of water and stuff like that, but they're both really trying to do things community oriented, regionalizing systems again. And especially Abe, it's about regionalizing economies. So he kind of blindsided everybody because everybody knows Abe as a grazer in the Northeast and a grazing consultant and a watershed guy. He loves to talk about watershed function and all that, but he's working on a project in Vermont now of, instead of paying for environmental services like we're doing with carbon markets and trading on Wall Street, he's trying to do it regionally, locally, where the town actually incentivizes the farmers for better practices and in turn gets better products and just a whole new economy that he's working on. And so that was really awesome. And then this fall, we had a holistic educator, Jeff Goebel. And I think, probably the most timely topic we've ever done was conflict resolution. Apparently there's some butting of heads going on anymore, what we're told.
But I think there's a few people that are legitimately trying very hard to start World War III right
Yeah,
now.
exactly. So that was really good. And Jeff's just a wonderful person. And then we teamed him with Deanna Lazinski, just a fabulous farmer in North Dakota who's, now direct marketing flour and pasta and almost all ancient grains, and her story and her husband Kelly. It's just fantastic. And so it was a great couple days there too. Really good year.
Do you have anything on the schedule, any plans yet for field school coming up in spring, or are you just trying to get through conference season first?
For now, we're not going to do a spring school next year. We're just going to go back to 1 per year, cut our workload in half. And we have it booked October 3rd and 4th. And our speaker will be Dr. Nasha Winters.
Okay.
Lynette and I will also be speaking. It's going to be geared towards physical health. If you don't know Nasha, she is a fantastic doctor, cancer doctor. She was diagnosed at 19 with stage 4 terminal cancer, cured herself, wrote a book, got educated, and now she trains doctors that are trying to get out of this system that's not working. She's in the process of building a farm in Arizona to treat cancer patients on.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Wow.
We shouldn't be treating sick people in hospitals if we want them to get better. We should be treating them on farms or in nature. And that's exactly what she's doing.
Tanya and I, when we were driving yesterday, we were actually having a discussion about a friend of ours that's been through cancer, that survived cancer, and been through 2 really heavy rounds of chemotherapy. And like the conversation was like, this person, yeah, they're trying to eat better, but they still go out and they, still drink a little bit, still eat some crap. And then we got to talking like, well, this doesn't make any sense. You basically are trying to poison the entire body just to kill one little part, just to really hurt one little part of it. And I guess what I'm thinking, what I'm getting at is like a lot of other things that we've kind of started to realize that maybe the answer is not trying to kill that, but trying to stimulate the parts that would be healing itself. Does that make sense, right?
Yeah, the mechanisms are all, I mean, I really believe they're all in the body that we need to keep ourselves healthy, and we don't use the tools we've been given.
And when we put things in our body like high fructose corn syrup, refined white sugar, enriched wheat flour, our body doesn't know what to do with everything in there. gluten intolerance is probably just herbicide, pesticide toxicity buildup in the body.
Management.
Most autoimmune disorders make sense. I mean, if you really look into the mechanism behind what's causing it, is your body's freaking out because it's so full of inflammatory junk that it can't separate that from itself anymore.
Yeah. And one thing about putting all that sugar in your body, cancer doesn't know what to do with it. That's food.
It's food for cancer. It's exactly what it is. Like literally sugar, corn syrup, carbs in general is food for cancer.
I think the one thing we're learning too is that you have to remember that what's the cause? We're always looking at what the problem is, to what the cause.
Well,
You know,
and how
why
to-
does this person suffering? Is there a stressor that's in their life that they, are there some changes that they need to make so that their body is able to, not necessarily fight off the cancer, but just not allow cancer to hold.
I think
So,
when we had Dr. Zach Bush at the field school in 2019, his opening comment that day was all cancer is caused by stress. And if that's not an eye opener,
so true. I mean, whether
Yeah.
it's stress on your body that you're putting on it with food it shouldn't be in it, or stress in your environment, or stress from not sleeping, or whatever. The biology belief, Brian and I listened to that several years ago, and that was kind of one of the common threads in the book was that I can't even remember what the percentage was that he says in that book, or quotes specifically that X amount of all of our disease is all environmentally caused. And it was like 90 some percent. I mean, it was a huge, huge amount of all disease coming from our outside environment, not from our DNA, not from our parents, but from things we can actually control.
And I'm not a doctor, neither any of us, and it's only thing that we can, any of us can really speak to is our personal experiences. And it doesn't take long when you stop eating seed oils, enriched white flour, and processed sugar before you start feeling better. And what I've really noticed over the last year and a half, 2 years, is that when I go eat something, like stop by and eat fast food in a moment of weakness, or just because you're on the road and need some convenient food, French fries fried in seed oil, I can almost feel them as soon as they hit my belly. I can almost feel it.
yeah, I can now eat out once and probably be okay. But if I eat out 2 meals in a row,
Days.
I'm sick.
I don't feel well for days anymore. It stops my whole gut. And I think, your system's not meant to process it, but it does get accustomed to processing all of that garbage. And then when you quit, it's functioning healthy again and you put it in there and it freaks out your whole system.
And it's so weird because the food scientists have figured out, even though the body is trying to tell you not to eat it, we figured out how to put the stuff in it to make you want to eat it anyway, and override those negative signals. So how was 2023 here on Fuller Farm?
A little dry. We've been in drought now for 3+ years, so it's getting, a little trying there. The farm itself is responding to our management. We're seeing pretty good positive changes in the soil and the resilience of the grasses and the pastures and things. So we know we're on the right track. If when we do start getting something that would resemble normal weather again, I think we're going to be in great shape. We're starting to see a lot of life below ground, a lot of earthworms and the microbiology, the infiltration's improving. So we know we're making some positive changes. Right now it's just needing some water in ponds. It's kind of, made it kind of a rough year hauling water too much. Aside from that, the farm is responding nicely to what we're doing.
Well, I know Josh and Gwen, what are they? Probably an hour and a half north, 90, 100 miles north?
Probably an hour.
they were telling me that, excuse me, they've caught some rains that grew some grass, but it was late. They just didn't catch enough. They didn't get enough heavy rains for any runoff to fill any of their ponds. So they were kind of watered out, and they moved south down towards Cassaday where they had some more grass. And I, I can't remember if they said that they had maybe a little more rain a little earlier down at Cassaday, or just they'd plan to save that grass. And I was kind of wondering if you've caught some of those rains and have some grass and are just short on water, or
Yeah, for the most part, we've kind of lived paycheck to paycheck the last couple of years. We keep enough rain to keep the grass going. We've had some spells where the grass really went backwards fast with the heat, but that's usually been a week or two at the most, and then we'll get a shower enough to keep the grass alive. But yeah, we haven't ran water here since May of 2022.
are your ponds looking okay?
If you're a dirt farmer, they do.
That's probably less than ideal if you're trying to
Yeah.
raise livestock.
We the sheep can still drink out of the pond if they have to. They literally crawl on their belly to get to it because they don't have the weight. The cows, I mean, not that we want the animals in the pond, but once in a while they get out and, they're in charge, and the cows can't get to the pond. Been that way for over a year.
How's the orchard doing? Has it recovered any this year?
No, another rough year with the orchard. We did have pears. Had a late freeze again. It's just, becoming more and more difficult with these weather extremes that we get. Last year we didn't have any fruit production because of high wind during pollination. That's what we kind of come down to. So, and then of course the drought and the heat. I imagine the heat was probably the bigger thing this year than the drought. I mean, for everything, it was just miserably hot. We had a really good apple harvest till probably mid-August. Made it within a month, and they just all aborted.
Just from the heat.
I think so, yeah.
I had a lot of tomatoes that did that. That looked like they kind of pollinated. It looked like they'd actually set fruit, and then the fruit just fell off.
Yeah, the heat got pretty brutal here through August and September, late July.
And see, it didn't start raining for us until really late in May, like just the last couple of days in May. And I'm not going to say it was hot, but there were some days kind of around the 20th of May that I'm looking at the grass thinking this grass looks like August, September in 110-degree heat in the middle of a drought. It should not look like this in May in any universe. And that was hard to watch. It was hard to look at. And what this year taught me was, the high intensity grazing events followed by long duration rest events. As long as you're appropriately managing the stock density through periods of drought, that stocking rate with rainfall, as soon as it rains, everything just explodes. And I noticed on some of the other properties around me that are more like a set stock type operation, they didn't grow near the grass that I did.
Yeah, we've got the same thing here. There's, the neighboring grass that might have looked good 2 falls ago doesn't look good today. Not that there's a lot of it. Once in a while you'll see pasture that looks pretty good, but they've really been abused now 2 falls in a row, and that's going to hurt them, especially next year. They'll pay for it even more. Now we've seen with us, we'll get a 1 week wet spell, and it's just amazing what happens. I mean, this place just explodes with life in a very short time. A lot of diversity. We know we're on the right track. We know we're getting there.
Just goes to sleep when it knows it's time to go to sleep and there's not water.
And you don't force it to stay awake and support livestock when it shouldn't. At least no more of it than you have to.
The weird thing for us, we were kind of like you in May. We thought we were done. We thought it was over. Our cheat was that tall and going to seed. And I'm like, if we can't even get cheat grazing, well, this wasn't May. This would have been like in April. Yeah, early April, mid-April.
At least you had cheat.
Well, that was kind of what we used to get us to grass, because we'd put out hay we ended up putting out hay for 6 months last year. And so that happens, and I'm like, man, our goose is cooked. And then we got a little shower, and then it kind of stayed alive, and then we got a wet spell, and we had cheat that tall. Now, once it went to seed, I thought it was done. I'd never seen cheat take off and grow like that once it was that close to maturity or anything really, but it saved our butt.
Well, for us, it started raining, like I said, about the end of May, beginning of June, and I didn't even take in like my custom grazing cattle. Like I kept kicking the can down the road, being like, let's wait for weather, let's wait for weather. This is the number. They might have to go home in July. And it kind of got down there to the middle of May. And he said, hey, I got to do something. I'm like, well, you can bring me this many, but just be prepared to send trucks back in 45 days if it doesn't rain. And then then it starts raining. Like it rains one time. Then it rains again. And it rains again. And it kind of start to relax a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until the 1st of July that it dawned on me, like, I don't have to call trucks in 2 weeks. This is kind of nice.
We even got confident just watching it rain at your place. I mean, if you want the drought to end here, it has to end there. And I'm like, okay, we're not getting the rains. Brian gets an inch and I get a quarter, but we're getting a little rain, and the drought mat keeps shrinking and keeps shrinking. We were just confident that it was over.
Well, up until about 3-4 years ago, it was the other way. It's like, oh, Gail and Josh would get 2 or 3 inches of rain, and Brian will get a half.
But that's kind of the way it's supposed to be a little bit, though.
I agree. That's the way it normally is.
Yeah, that would be more.
Not to be mean, but
I mean, there's a reason you're out here in this part of the state, right?
Yeah.
And it's
There's
not
a reason
because
we
of the
stay
drought.
on the east side of the Flint Hills.
Yes.
I mean, not gonna lie, it does get a little bit rougher. It gets more difficult the further west you go with the rainfall, and just the difference of what is it, like 200 miles. I think it's like 200 miles from here to there. Just the difference in the spring and summer humidity that you guys will get here that we won't have at home. And the humidity during the day, that does a lot to help plants out, because out there, if we don't get rain for 10 days, 2 weeks in 110 degree heat, everything stops and starts to cure out. It doesn't do that here because of the higher humidity.
Yeah, but the downside is, in my life, I've seen the humidity lessen. We don't have the humidity we did 20 or 30 years ago. We're becoming you, I'm afraid.
We've noticed at our house that's different than it is out at your dad's, like just in gardening. Brian's dad has asparagus growing all over his garden. And I mean, like in between everything this year, it crowded out his tomatoes. He didn't get any tomatoes because it was crowding out. But he's left it there because it creates kind of like a cool, humid area for him. And he's up on this huge ridge, and a south wind blows right across his garden all the time. And I think that's helped some, but just where he's trying to grow things compared to us, it's like a different climate, and it's 10 miles away.
Yeah.
But to your point, though, yeah, I absolutely agree. Humidity is huge because, Walter Yana told us in 2018 when he was here that I asked him about dew, fog, things like that. What does that do to our average rainfall? He goes, if you can catch it, probably add 50% to your average annual rainfall.
I could see that.
How many people can catch fog or dew? I mean, you have to have a leaf, and hopefully, you can catch some fog on a 2-inch tall plant. Catch a hell of a lot more on a 2-foot tall plant.
Yep.
I've seen that, and I've wondered about that for years. The heavy late fog in the morning in the summers. I'll go out in the side-by-side and have to run the windshield wipers because there's so much water coming up over the front of the machine just off the grass. I'll have to run the windshield wipers so I can see. And I've wondered for a long time, is there a way to quantify that in terms of effective precipitation and what the grass is receiving? Because when I can go out for a week straight and every morning there's a heavy wet dew, and if you just get out and walk 5 feet, you're soaked from the waist down.
Yeah, there is. He thought, I don't know if he had this backed up by science, but he thought you could probably find a way of hanging a paper towel or something and then wringing the water out of it, and there would be a calculation. He said there's probably a way you can measure that, but I don't know if he had a true scientific, formula for that or not. I would be really curious with you, how much do you have in the morning compared to your neighbors, even in your more drier environment than us? Because I know when we left the other farm with our organic matter from 5 to 7% on the other farm that we had improved over the years, I wore overshoes 340, 50 mornings of the year, and I wore overshoes till 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. There was a lot to do. And here, I have yet to wear out a pair of overshoes here in 3 years. And I know we're in more drought, but it's also the water cycle isn't functioning here. We're
Right.
not getting the moisture coming up out of the soil because our water cycle isn't functioning properly yet.
Do you think that there's a difference between precipitation that comes from fog or dew, like we're talking about, as far as mineral content versus rain, and how the plant would effectively absorb that because it wouldn't just be washed off?
That's a great question. It would be different because it's coming from much lower in the atmosphere. So there's
Probably more concentrated because it's not all just washing out.
probably some differences to it. And with that, I don't know, we're also raining glyphosate anymore.
And
I don't know how high
microplastics.
glyphosate, you could also maybe argue would there be more glyphosate in
In
fog
fog.
than rain?
That's what I was
Because-
kind of wondering.
So there could be a catch to that.
Working in the nursery several years ago, one of the things that was really, really notably clear when you had a rain in the morning on one of the houses that had like a shade cloth on it that let water in versus one of the covered houses, the plants that receive the rainwater 100% grow and respond differently to plants that receive well water even. So, I mean, I would think there would be a
Yeah.
big difference there.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. And then add to that, some of our rainfall is microbially enhanced or produced. And does that change the mineral content of even one rain to the next rain?
I was going to say, in rainwater, there's also going to be some bacteria. There's going to be, there's going to be some microbial life and some bacteria and things that are alive and moving that aren't going to be from a well water source. That's going to be, from underground. Or I guess in well water, there's usually microbes and bacteria too. At least some of them.
It's just different. I
It's
mean,
just a
the
different
plants
kind
are
of
meant to catch the water from the sky. And you can tell that clearly when you see, 30 plants that are exactly the same as 30 plants. And you walk in the morning and they've each had a quarter inch of rain. And one of them was natural and one of them came out of well water. It wasn't even city water, clean well water way down south. And the plants just are awake and vibrant and alive and, firm looking and healthy. And the other ones are just kind of droopy.
That's interesting. You expect that from city water. Don't think about it.
With well water.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
But once again, water.
Yeah.
Have
Well,
that-
but well
how
water,
do you how do you
well water
keep
is moving.
how do you those minerals are within that water?
Yeah,
They-
that's the
there
thing
has to be
well water wouldn't have the
Moving.
vortex. It won't be doing that. I assume, when it's moving through soil, it's probably not
Well,
able to
groundwater's
spin like it.
more meant to be, I mean, in the scheme of plants, in the plant cycle, more meant to be where the water's stored and kind of like filtered, not necessarily where we're watering our plants. So it's supposed to be coming from the sky most of the time.
Yeah.
So it makes
But-
sense it wouldn't be.
No, but water when it's on the surface moving, creek, river, whatever, it's constantly in this little vortex. You see these little, and it's just the way water, and I think that's part of how it keeps mineralized. I think it was Zach Bush and Joe Mercola did a podcast I listened to several years ago on hydration, and one of the things they talked about with our reservoir system is once you stop the flow of water, it starts to demineralize instantly. And I'm thinking it probably has to do with that. You're constantly seeing that water wanting to spin a little bit, even if it's flowing north and south. It's still got some circles to it.
Right, because all the river beds are different, and the water is
Mhm.
at water molecules as they
Yeah.
slip past. Yeah, makes sense.
It's just it's stirred. I mean, it's just constantly just like
And when
stirring
it
up.
stops, when it's still, then that wouldn't keep anything up. That makes a lot of sense. It's interesting.
But I was want to circle back to the question you had about, dew on my place versus the neighbor's grass. Now, I'll do my observations from my side of the fence or from the county road, because good fences make good neighbors,
Mhm.
and I'm not going to go out onto the neighbors, especially where I can be seen, mess around in the dirt or mess around their grass. But just from my side of the fence and driving through the roads, I mean, the tall grass catches the same amount of dew, no matter where it is. That's kind of been my observation. And of course, how dense your grass is too, how dense and tall. But if you don't have any tall grass, I mean, if you're grazing buffalo and gamma grass that's 2, 3, 4 inches tall on, 2 or 300 pounds an acre of forage, how much are you catching with that dew? Well, not a whole lot. It's blowing right across.
Yeah.
How much am I catching in 5, 6 foot tall big blue stem and Indian grass? Probably a whole bunch.
But I would venture to guess is with dew coming up that if you and your neighbor both had foot tall grass, I still bet you have more dew than they have.
Because the dew's not necessarily coming from the air always. It's coming from the
I think
surface of the
there's
soil.
also, moisture coming up
Yeah.
from the soil all the time, and I would hope you would have better water holding capacity and infiltration rates than across the fence. And so I would think you would be having more dew. And if you obviously probably always have bigger plants for the most part. So you're able to cycle that back down and keeping, that from evaporating as much as across the fence.
I'll try next time we have a dew to go out and look and try to find a patch of the neighbors that looks similar to mine across the fence, and just see. Maybe go over there and just walk through it and see how wet my pants get versus the other side of the fence.
A fun thing we had this spring is as this soil is starting to come alive, we're starting to see more, fungal species, which is what we're hoping. There weren't a lot of mushrooms when we got here in the cow pies or the soil or the trees or anything. And this spring we had that one wet spell in late May, and Lynette stumbled across just a whole plethora of mushrooms, and it was in some cover crop that had some decent size. And so we're out there one morning, and she come and got me. We're looking for all these things, and you just you pull that canopy back and poke your head down in there, and you just get hit with this steam, not steam, but hot, humid air coming up. Well, that's moisture that I've been able to catch, and that's just part of that. I think that small water cycle.
Tiny little greenhouses down there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, which is why we had a perfect place for mushrooms.
Yep.
Colin Seiss, my buddy in Australia, 3 or 4 years ago, they had the big wildfires again in Australia, and they hit his farm. I think it was I don't remember which month it was, but it was he was going into his dormant season. It'd be like hitting us in September. So, the grasses were going dormant, drying down. Not a good time for a wildfire. It was 114 degrees Fahrenheit the day the fire hit him.
Ooh.
And it burned a few 100 feet onto his property and went out.
Because it was so wet underneath. I've wondered about that
Because of
on
his
the ranch
humidity.
before. I think
He makes his humidity.
Thinking about dew from both above and below is something like maybe we haven't really been doing much. But yeah, like that you're absolutely coming from stuff you've caught not today, but last week or last month.
You mentioned Colin in Australia, and I can't help but think about, Josh and Gwen were telling me that they went to this, they call them cattle stations in Australia. 4.4 million acres. This one station. He said they'd get up, load up a couple dirt bikes, and drive 200 miles to their work site for the day. do their work, and then load up and drive 200 miles back. Now, this is not like driving 200 miles from Gail's house to Brian's house down nice paved US 54. This is the outback of Australia where there are no paved roads. Like, could you imagine 200 miles of ranch 2-track to get to work?
No thanks.
That'd be exhausting. Terrible.
Australia sounds like a very, very strange place to ranch, but I imagine a very similar conversation takes place in Australia among friends saying, those Yanks in America sound like they do some really strange stuff. They were talking about how they use helicopters down there a lot to muster cattle. They call their big gatherings, they call them musterings, and they'll use helicopters. Which if you want to see something cool on YouTube, like that's something cool to watch. Australian helicopter mustering. Those guys know how to fly. I've been in a helicopter before, and I would have zero desire to go ride in one of those. Doing that, it would be fun to watch, but not to do. But Josh said that the last day they were there, one of the helo mustering pilots took him and Gwen up. And I'll tell you guys after we hit the recording, but if you want to know, you have to go back and listen to last week's episode because it's a funny story. But you might not, after listening to Josh, you might not be able to pay me enough to get me in that helicopter.
Yeah, I doubt it. Be worse than a crop duster, probably.
Ugh.
And I've watched him when we had the feral hog issue 10 years ago. Did you get touched by that over here? Yeah, we had them. And U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, I think it was Fish and Wildlife, one of their like obscure divisions. They came out, they got money from Kansas Health and Environment, fly a helicopter, and they shot pigs out of a helicopter. And this guy was taking that thing down into canyons. Like, we were standing up on the ridge and looking down at the helicopter, and they're down banking through these.
On the ranch?
Some of it on me, some of it over on Hoagland, some of it up on Koger, and
Those
off
canyons
course.
aren't very wide, man.
I know. I know, and it's kind of a big helicopter to drop into one of those little box canyons and go in there and shoot pigs. But I was talking to the pilot, and the pilot had like 30,000 hours in that helicopter. Like, I bet he knows how to fly it well.
Yeah. Power to him.
I'm glad there's guys in the world that'll do that job, so I don't have to. So, 2024, what are your big plans? I provided a
I always like to
range.
hear the answer to this one.
What are your big
both-
plans,
yeah,
Lynette?
both
What are
of
your
us. We
big
both
plans?
will have an answer
There
for
you
this.
go. There
Go
you
ahead.
go. Go ahead.
Yeah. What
Well-
are you excited about for the coming year?
Just to see how the farm changes. I've so enjoyed this journey of watching it all change and all the input. I've loved all the different plants that have arrived that arrived as we can practice. So, or as the practice previous year. And just love all to watch all of this. And I love all the different birds that show up and all the different insects and all wildlife. Continually. I mean, this year we counted 7 coveys of quail. And when we came, we saw 2 on the
Wow.
2 quail.
2 quail on the road. So, yeah, we've seen so many this year, and that's what I enjoy. I like that part. I grew up riding horses and cattle and know what it's supposed to look like.
You remember a time before trees?
Yeah, these wide open spaces. That's all we saw. We rode. Yeah, the trees were very few and very far between. What I got to see when I was growing. So I know what it should look like, and I know the way that I know the plants. I used to remember all the plants because my dad taught me a lot of the native plants, but I don't remember them all. But I remember what they look I don't remember the names, but I remember what they look like. And so when they arrive, I know that that's what's supposed to. That's what I'm seeing for.
Like grandma teaching me all the bird calls, but for some
Yeah.
reason when I became an adult, I didn't think that was important knowledge, and I
It just left.
discarded it all.
Yeah.
Forgot that to make room for
Yeah, for
some,
really important stuff.
yeah,
you know,
something
like
important like what,
fertilizer rates.
yeah,
And,
or I
yeah.
was thinking like what brand of herbicide.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting how your brain does make room for those things when you slow down, though. We were down at the river. I had my niece and nephew here a while back, and we were sitting down at the river playing, and there was a strange bird. I've lived there for 10 years, and there's a strange bird call that we kept hearing. And the kids were, "Oh, what's that? What's that?" I don't know. It's a bird noise I've never heard here before. So the kids and I dig up, get on the internet and start looking and come up with what the kind of bird is and his call. And he's been living down at the river for months and months now, and we hear him from the house. And it's some kind of bird I've never even seen anywhere near our house. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool to see things just. I think it's even since nobody's been farming the field. It's not in great condition or anything, but at least the bad stuff has stopped. There's a lot more life in our yard.
It's not being sprayed and it's not being tilled.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for both of us for next year, our farm ground, we're converting half of it back to native grass, or we're not converting it. We're allowing it to convert, and
You're just going to leave it alone.
yeah, and we're seeing it. I mean, it's going through the steps that we're expecting, and so this past fall, 23, or where we are now, we're hoping to see a little bit of switchgrass and maybe a Indian grass or two. They're usually the first grasses that show up. The forbs show up first, and we saw a lot of, we think, Indian grass and even big blue stem last fall, but it was so dry it didn't seed out some of it, so it's a little hard to tell. But I think we're actually ahead of schedule, so we're both kind of excited to see what it's going to look like next year if we get some the water.
I have a real hard time finding Indian grass until it throws a seed head.
Yeah, me too. Real easy to identify in October.
Yep.
Pretty difficult the rest of the time for me. We're still on a pretty sharp learning curve with trying to ID plants and all that stuff.
When did you start transitioning that farm ground?
We moved here September of 19. And so that's when it started.
So
the downside of the thing that slowed us down, I guess, we've got 160 acres total with 7 ponds, and this is 40 acres, so it's a fourth of the farm with no water.
okay.
So trying to graze it and get any kind of biological, speeding up biological time, which is what we do with grazing, that was a little difficult to do, the first couple of years. The sheep is not so hard because hauling water to the sheep is pretty easy. You can haul several days worth of water in one tank. So we were able to get the sheep on it pretty easily. The cattle, we had to be, the first couple of years we had to go out there when it was raining, so the terraces had water. We've now dug, 3 holes or 4 holes so we've got some water out there. So that's really helped us get the cattle out there more. So we're starting to crank it up now.
Okay.
Hang on. All right, go ahead.
Say something.
Hello.
Hello.
Goodbye.
All right, we're going in 3, 2. So that farm ground, did you plant it back, or did you put any seed out there, or are you just relying on seed bank?
We're relying on seed bank. I've attempted a couple of annual cover crops. That's been tricky between the drought and not having instant access to drill and things like that. So the cover cropping hasn't done much. So we really haven't got, as far as getting a lot of grazing off of it and a lot of carbon, doing the what you fully expect out of a cover crop. Yes, we're getting some gains out of it, but it's minimal compared to what we could be doing if we had a little better management. So yeah, and everything we're getting is just coming out of the seed bank. It's really been kind of fun to watch. When we moved here, this farm was managed organically and managed like a golf course. So everything was mowed, weed-eated, disked, and it was perfect. And the farm ground, I think for the last 2 or 3 years, he was disking it multiple times a year. It is just beat to a pulp. And then the year that they had it on the market and we bought it, they were finished mowing it once a week. And so we got here and, it was crabgrass and bindweed and anything that could grow under 3 inches. And the next year, so in 2020, our first summer here, it was probably 80% ragweed, common ragweed, just completely dominant. And of course, the bindweed and some of that stuff was still there. And there was some diversity, but it was just solid ragweed. The sheep, we were able to get them on it a couple times, and they did some good on it, but we didn't get them across the whole thing. In 21, it was probably 40-50% ragweed, and then a lot of forbs. We had Illinois bundleflower and sunflower, and just a lot of the native forbs started showing up.
A little bit better than ragweed.
Yeah, and then in 22, less ragweed still. And then this year, there's still ragweed out there. I don't know if it's still dominant. It probably is, probably about 10 or 20%. But saw some grasses this fall and a lot more diversity in the forbs, and it's been really fun to watch. I mean, there's really times you drive out there, and it's actually more beautiful than the prairie is. You get a week or two when everything's blooming or something, and it's just gorgeous out there. And you're getting a lot of birds and stuff coming in there now too. So.
Do you know how long it was farmed for?
Well, yeah, kind of. And if that was probably farmed as long as
people have been farming in Flint Hills.
Yeah. We've got maps on this farm dating back to 1920s. And even the native, 2/3 of the way up the hill, was farmed for 10 to 20 years.
Gosh, doesn't it just blow your mind what they farmed back in the 30s?
And that was a steep hill.
It always blows me away when I see some of the places that there are terraces on from the 30s or the 50s. I'm like, why did they think it was a good idea to farm that?
Yeah, still today you can walk, and whoever reseeded it, there's places out here that the go back, most people can't even tell it. It's that good. It doesn't look like it's been disturbed, but when you get to the line, almost to the top of the hill, you have to literally step up onto the unbroke prairie. It lost that much soil.
That's crazy.
In a short time.
And that's one of those things that, you pointed out to the right person. They're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But you pointed out to the guy that used to own that dirt, and he's like, oh no, that's not what happened. That soil didn't erode. I don't know where it went.
Yeah. Yep. I still have those discussions today, unfortunately, that farmers aren't causing erosion.
I imagine that's a pretty short discussion on your part.
Usually. No sense wasting time with some. Isn't there some kind of saying about arguing with an idiot? We'll pass on that.
Okay.
How are things going with your stage? You guys rent your house out over here, right? You guys have a lot of guests during colder months, or is it mostly warm weather stays?
Well, right now it's hunting season. Greenwood County is really known for their bucks. Whitetail deer is quite popular. So, yeah, so renting the house, for that hunting season starts the first part of November and goes until the 10th. So we have a lot of people who want to reconnect with the farm. That's what we get mostly during the summer, is a lot of kids and families like that. So they want to see the animals, they want to interact with the animals, they want that experience. The one thing we figured out is people come for the farm experience. At times it's not associated with other things, just that they want the farm experience, which takes time to take people around and to show them different things, and they request that. So we do that, but I always tell Gail it's one interaction at a time. And every time you interact with somebody who doesn't have farm experience, you give them a different view of farmers, and you give them also a different view of how farms, and they find this farm, which is so fun for us because we don't sometimes see the beauty. We sometimes just see what. And with them, when they come, they are just in complete awe. Flowers blooming, light, the way the animals, how peaceful and quiet. They're so surprised by all, because that's not the life that they get to experience in wherever they go. And so when they get to see that, it's wonderful for us because we get to view the farm in somebody else's.
I think that's amazing. I think oftentimes on our own places we miss so much and mistake needing to provide an experience for someone when really you're providing a place for the experience to happen because the stuff's already here,
The space is there, and really that's what people
is the space.
They need
the space and the quiet and the peace and
just the green, everything that's out. So many neat spots.
Yeah, for example, in 2020, when the farm ground was 70-80% ragweed, it wasn't the most fun place to go to get lost in nature for Lynette and I. The visitors, they don't
care what
they don't know
ragweed
what
is, do they?
ragweed is.
Right?
Well, they
Yeah.
might in September, for a couple of weeks, but other than that, they thought it was beautiful. So it's, and that's a good reminder, especially for me, is beauty in the eyes of the beholder, whatever that is.
That's a cool way to knit community into your farm too, because a lot of times, everybody thinks you have to go to town to, intermingle with people, and really part that's missing is them being away from all of that. And, you guys definitely get to enjoy your place more because you are seeing it through other people's eyes. A lot of people miss that, I imagine.
During the get big or get out era, which I just kind of have this thought that is maybe starting to end. Maybe we'll see the end of this get big or get out era. But our communities are smaller, and the thought for 20 years has been, well, if you want to do anything, you got to go to town. You got to go to town. And now it seems like the whole script is flipped, and the town folks want to come out here to get back to everything they thought they were escaping 20 years ago.
Yep, I'm just a farmer. Okay. I heard somebody say that yesterday on a podcast we were listening to. A gentleman who seemed very intelligent, actually, said about himself, I was just raised on a farm. Like, what do you mean you were just raised on a farm? You could probably solve problems that most people wouldn't even dream of solving because of that,
Little similar to I'm just a stay-at-home mom.
Exactly. Like, you're one of the best problem solvers in the world.
Just a stay-at-home mom. You're an organizer, you're a scheduler, you're a nurse, you're
janitor,
a medic.
maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
I think there's another thing that they're coming for. I mean, what she talked about is spot on, but there's also a minority that are coming to see the sky, especially at night.
Yes.
Just things that, again, I try not to take for granted because just nothing more beautiful than a night sky in the country when it's dark. But go to Kansas City on any given night and look up.
And it's not there. It just doesn't even exist.
Like the Milky Way. How often do you guys see the Milky Way at night? Whenever there's not clouds, right?
Yep.
We see it whenever there's not clouds. And all four of us take it for granted that we are in, I don't know, probably let's just say less than 1% of the population that on a cloudless night can see the Milky Way. There's probably less than 1% of the population in this country that can say that.
We were talking about Turner Falls when we were eating earlier. We went out there, and I think a lot of times when people are thinking about concessionizing on their farms or their places or whatever their land is, you think about needing to have to have a destination or supplying something for people to do. And when we went out to Turner Falls, that's one of the things that I noticed is that there's nothing there. It's too shallow to boat in. You can fish a little bit, but there's swimming, and that's it. There's swimming and camping, and there's no provided activities. And it's the exact same reason that you guys are saying the activity people want is just simply to get away. And I think a lot of people on their farms and ranches are taking for granted what someone else sees when they get there.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that the families that we get here that come to bring their kids to interact with animals or nature for maybe the first time or rare occasion for them. And it seems like we have two different sets of kids. We have one set of kids that don't stop. I mean, they hit the ground running, and when they get tired of chasing chickens or looking at cows or trying to climb a tree, they make up some game to play, or we have some that come down here and try to trap chickens or ducks, and they try to build whatever they can to trap something or catch something. But unfortunately, we have way too many kids that go with a tour with mom and dad in the morning, and then they're in the house the rest of the day.
On the Wi-Fi.
Yep.
It's
And
interesting.
you can just see the lack of imagination. And usually we know in 30 seconds upon arrival what kind of
person has been raised.
what kind of
Yeah.
what kind of stay those people are going to have. And we see some things that we could probably, if we knew ahead of time, we could probably even tell what it was going to be like. But it's just, I'm kind of torn between, it's really cool to see these kids come out here and do things, and
like they innately want to trap stuff. Why
when we
is
were
that?
kids.
Yeah.
You're just constantly out making up games or whatever, but it's just so sad to see these other kids that, what we're doing to our kids today with squashing their imagination and desensitizing them from nature, and really feel for them and what their life will be like.
Have you guys ever hosted homeschool groups out here?
No, not
Yeah, well, what we get is we get home
Families.
Yeah, there's a lot of those, and you can tell them pretty easily.
Yeah.
When they come, because they truly are very interested. Their questions are amazing. They're very connected with what's.
They interact
like adults.
They come to you.
Yeah.
They come find us to ask a question.
Ask a question.
We don't have to chase them down. And
because one of the things that we tell them is that we practice free range with our chickens and everything, and your children are welcome to free range. We kind of let them know we have lots of fencing and stuff like that. If you need them to stay in a certain area, close the, and just let them go. And so the first thing that a lot of them will do is they'll come to me and I'll give them a quick tour. And then that gives them that open opportunity to go see those animals again and again and again. And they do it every day.
And those kids you'll see out here by themselves.
Yep. They come out
Maybe
by themselves.
5 or 6 years old even, and the parents.
Confident and yeah.
Yep. They know where they're going. They know what they're going to look for. And then, they'll stop you and, if they see you, and ask a couple questions to what they're seeing, or, even just tell you, hey, I just want you to know I saw, a pig limping or something. They saw something. And that's cool to hear them.
We'll have questions.
Yeah.
Why does that chicken live over there?
Why does this thing sticking out here? Why does this look like that?
And not real common, but once in a while we'll even have a homeschool family come, and this is, class. They come out here and they find a way to have class and, different things. And we've had a couple of, or at least one family that was here about Easter and used it for, they were homeschoolers, but they, have a heavier spiritual load on their learning, and they use this as tied it into the Bible and all of that. So it's really cool to see all the diversity we get in the people that come here, and especially the ones that free range.
Yeah. Do you guys remember your very first day? Your very first people that stayed on the farm? I think that's something I would remember, because I think I would be nervous the first time, maybe even a little.
Yeah, it was tough to have the first ones here, and they didn't interact. So it was not a. One of the things I learned was that 2-day stays are the best. Don't ever do a single day stay with people, because they come here expecting it to be a motel, and so it's a long, dark drive, and most people will come in the dark and leave in the dark, and then they're unhappy because it's so dark.
Right.
And so you're like, you've got to come.
Well, it takes a day to get acquainted.
It is,
On day 2 is when you see the real exploring.
For city people to to stop too. You know, like we talk about this a lot on vacation, like the first day or two, you're getting out of being at home at work mentality. And then you need a day when you get home to come back, but it takes a little bit to get there. So yeah, I could see why one day would be a little disappointing for everybody, you guys especially, really.
Yeah, the RV people that we get to come through here, one of the positives of COVID was how many people during the lockdown bought an RV and just hit the road and, had kids. A lot of them even were teenagers, and, instantly you're homeschooling, and a lot of
Right.
times for the first time ever.
Yeah, it changed
But
the way people think about it so much.
yeah, those families that did that and made that choice, those kids learned more in 3 months or a year or whatever they was on the road and that they probably learned in their entire education in the school system.
Life-changing things.
Yeah.
And we also saw too, they didn't fear other, and that was something the pandemic kind of caused, that people, especially scared kids about these kids that were traveling in these RVs. They unloaded out of those RVs like, this is a farm and we get to roam, and they had no fear of it. And we weren't fearful people. We had a farm.
And we had a family from California pretty early on, and they had teenage boys, two high school boys, and they let the boys plan the entire trip. It was homeschool. The boys got to plan what they were going to go see. I think their goal was to hit all the state capitals, or as many as they could, as part of their their
history,
homeschooling,
like American history lessons.
Exactly.
We kind of did a really cool trip.
But
when Chris
how the
was
journey, they got to determine how that journey went. So we're for sure going to Topeka, to the Kansas state capitol, but how we get there was the boys.
But they also, while they were here, they met a neighbor of ours who has a goat dairy. And so the boys postponed their trip to Topeka by 1 day so they could go milk goats.
Oh, cool.
Two California teenagers that got to milk goats. I mean,
Pretty
how
cool
often do you do that in
experience.
public school?
Never. I mean, in California public school,
Yeah.
never.
Do you guys have return guests often?
A few.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's because the experience. But a lot of.
So, if you were going to think how I want to put this. What I want to ask is lessons learned from setting up the farm stays and how you do things here and how you would do it differently.
I mean, for us, the first thing that we learned was two nights stay to do that, just because that way they really truly get the experience.
Okay.
I can't really think of anything off the top of my head we'd do different. Obviously, we've made changes. Like Lynette said, we went from 1 night to 2 night with Airbnb, but all of our campers are mostly overnighters. I think a big part of it is just meeting them and letting them know our why. I think that really just helps. I mean, by and large, probably 75% of the people that come don't have the best diet in the world, don't really understand why we're doing what we're doing, don't put a lot of this together with what this has to do with human health or any of that. So I think it's important to have those conversations. Lynette's really, really good at it. I mean, she's great at meeting the people. One thing we've been talking about that we need to change, this is probably not where you were going, but 95% of the people that come here bring 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 cases of bottled water with them.
Really?
That will change next year. We're not going to ban it yet, but we're going to highly discourage that.
Okay.
But
Tell me more. I'm with you. Microplastics, waste. It's probably just Dallas or Kansas City municipal water in a bottle anyway.
Mm-hmm. But obviously, we're not getting our point across that the water here is safe, and we have reverse osmosis and all those things. But we have to find ways to lower our carbon footprint a little more. There's things that we can do to to help the environment while people are here having a good stay.
So education on top of what you're doing, just providing the stay, finding a way to educate people a little bit more.
We do that. I mean, obviously with the Airbnb, just to cut down the trash load, was so different containers for different recycling materials, explaining, about all food waste is never waste. You put it all in this container and you get to go out and or you get to go feed the chicken, whichever, whatever you want to do, and take your food waste out there and just see that this is food. I mean, what you waste is never, on this farm, we use it all. So, nothing is ever wasted. It's always goes to something. So we always make sure that that's the things that I try to teach them. And even with my hunters, we kind of had a little discussion, about, okay, so he's like, oh, well, I've got a container full of food. I'm like, that's perfect. Right over the fence right there.
And
That'll work.
if you have
know.
like people, I think people want to participate in what you want them to participate in. But if you just left a note out that said, take your food out to the chickens or whatever, it wouldn't be the same as you telling the kids, this is why we're doing it. This is what happens when we do it. This is what happens when we don't, and actually the act of them participating in the thing, that cements memories.
That's what I always try to remind myself is that it does take a lot of time. So for me to do all of this extra stuff, that takes away from time the things that I need to get done. And so I always try to remind myself that every contact with somebody is important. And that every time that I help change just one little thing, person, or whether it, or just an awareness of what food waste are.
It's making the most of each contact you have with your guests, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And in the case of the food waste, especially with the families, I mean, that's just a win-win because the kids just go gaga because they get to feed an animal. So that makes it even more fun. And I think that's.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's going to be part of our thing with the water bottles. It's not just, or the plastic water bottles, isn't just banning them, but it's just letting people know. We want to try to find a way to educate them of what these water bottles are doing into the environment, and so not just that they maybe not do it here, but rethink it the next time they go anywhere to buy one to take with me and.
Buy a metal water bottle to take with you instead of buying cases of water everywhere.
Yeah, I bet that's the first time a lot of people have seen all of their food waste in one place to actually have, a genuine concept of how much is there.
Yeah.
And water bottles would be the same way. If people are bringing them, you're asking them to keep them all in one place. You have to look at all that trash, the whole time you're here.
So there's a gentleman that's in my life that's a friend of my dad's. My dad has known this guy since college. His name's Randy. I don't know if I've mentioned him on the podcast or not before, but Randy is a very, very interesting guy. He's made his living most of his life sorting garbage. That's a very simplistic view. I don't know exactly what his job title is, but what he would do is he would go like New York or Chicago, would contract with him and the company he was with to come do a waste management study. So they'd go to the landfill and pick up a whole bunch of garbage and take it back and sort it out. And he said he could tell an awful lot about a group of people from the kind of garbage that they produce and what they throw away. He said the amount of food that you see is just absolutely appalling in the landfill. But he said that the worst offender for taking up space in a landfill, plastic water bottle. Plastic water bottles are taking up so much space in landfills. Because what do most people do when they get done drinking it? Put the lid on it and throw it in the garbage. They don't maybe cut a slit in the bottle so the air can get out of it to compact. They don't crush the bottle so it takes up less space in the bag. They just put the cap on the empty bottle and throw it away and never think about it again. I've crushed my bottles for a long time because I've lived in the country. Have to take out your own trash. I mean, I would rather take out one heavy bag than 5 really light bags. Crush your dang bottles, you crush your dang cans. But what amazes me is single-use plastics. Just absolutely blow my mind. And you're like, okay, so we have a plastic 5-gallon water jug, like camping water jug. Those are reusable. Those are great. 5-gallon bucket. You could put all kinds of stuff in them. You can reuse it. You could, when its useful life is done as a bucket, you could turn it into other stuff. But a plastic water bottle, a sandwich bag, it's like a Ziploc bag for sandwiches. My dad probably still washes and reuses Ziploc bags to this.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
So do we.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And sometimes when I'm throwing away a bag that we've used once, I feel bad about it because I look at that plastic bag and I just can't help but think about the amount of oil and the amount of energy that it took to make that bag. And we use it one time. And then it goes to the landfill to be thrown away. Like, let's talk about carbon sequestration. Like, let's just leave some of it down there and not make so many single-use plastics. That'd be a good start.
It's all about,
I don't
all
know
about
where I was going with
convenience
that one.
anymore. Everything in our lives is about fast, cheap, and easy.
So you can get to the next place
Yep.
that you
You know,
don't want to be at.
Yeah. A water bottle and what's a water jug cost? We all carried a water jug.
I don't know, 15, 20 bucks.
5 cases of water would pay for that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then you've got money to spend.
But you've got to wash that out once in a while.
Yep, that's true.
I mean,
You're
don't-
supposed to wash them out once in a while. I think sometimes my water bottle has its own very unique microbiome.
Oh, no. When was the last time I haven't washed ours in ages. Have you?
Like the coffee pots in the Navy. Like if they didn't have layers of varnish built up in the bottom of them, you didn't want to use it because it was too new.
gross.
Flavor.
Gross.
So besides sharing your why, what would be, like, I guess I'm asking, what are your other tips for setting up farm stays or starting that type of operation? Because I think there's quite a few people out there that are looking for more ways to concessionize their property and get, maybe get some more foot traffic so they can sell some more beef, or they've got an outbuilding, but whatever.
Yeah, I think, I'll let you go. This is more your enterprise anyway.
Just convenient for those people. I mean, it's a convenience thing, right? I mean, so if you do want, if you want more people to come, let's just say Airbnb, VRBO, you get it posted on there. You can also use Hip Camp if you just have, just a space that people can come. Harvest Host is another one. Harvest Host is amazing. It's campers that they don't pay unless they use electricity or something like that, and they just buy product. And a lot of times they already know what products you sell, so they're looking for you. A lot of the camping people, they're looking for high quality products because they know that they can't get them anyplace else. So as they're making their tour across the country, they're looking for farms like this. But really, it's just meeting everybody wherever they're at and always welcoming them to your farm. That's the first thing I do is, as the camper or as the people arrive, I meet them because I want them to see that I'm a person and that this is our home and this is our place. And it's amazing how much respect they'll have for that. Once they've met you and they know about what you're doing here. So yeah, kind of my tips to try to do it and just, always meet them.
Yeah, what
Welcome
she
them.
said about meeting them is so important because, you get a whole new layer of respect of them for your property, of not wanting to throw out their cigarette butts or their water bottles or whatever. I mean, they realize there's humans here that care, so that's really important. We've got where Airbnb that, Harvest Host, they're required or highly encouraged to purchase product in lieu of rent. Well, that's not the case with Airbnb, but we've still got, our price list is hanging on the refrigerator, and, usually part of the discussion is, we sell products. So there's ways for us to try to sell other things We try to, if they want a full-blown tour, they have to pay for it. Obviously, Lynette or I meet them when they arrive, and they kind of get the nickel tour of what to do where. But if they really want the full-blown thing, then that's something they pay for. So there's ways to, add value to them, but also revenue for us.
Did you guys have to add anything infrastructure-wise before you were able to host just campers? I mean, electricity obviously is a thing, but I mean just regular
You
campers.
don't even have to have
The Harvest Host, they're not supposed to have, they're supposed to be fully contained or self-contained campers. But on the rare, we've had a couple a year that'll come in, and for whatever reason, the water wasn't working in their last place, and they'll ask for water or electricity, and we always let them have it. We don't ever say no. We don't play with the rules very good, but they're not supposed to need anything. So no, we haven't had to add anything for that or Airbnb. The hip camp, the people come with the tent campers, it was just a matter of setting up campsites, which I built little fire rings out of bricks. They really
Just to
wasn't
mark them
anything.
off, kind of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now that was, part of that was just so they could find their spot and things like that. So no, we really haven't put much into any of them, really.
A lot of them are pretty low effort. I've got a couple of hip camp spots on the ranch that, I'm a little farther off the beaten track, and I'm not in the Flint Hills, so there's just not near the tourism out in the Red Hills, but I still get a few on that, I still get a few on my hip camp sites, and it's been a pretty low effort deal, and I haven't been the best about going out to meet everybody that comes in, because it's right off the road. There's a lot of one night come and goes, and I think I only charge like $30 a night for that. And if I'm done with my work at noon and I drive the 10 miles home and the camper doesn't show up till 6:30, it's hard for me to want to go back out there for 5 minutes just to meet them and be like, yeah, pull down there and park.
And I also think that they pointed out a really good reason to look at it differently. Like, honestly, I know you've met some people and had good interactions with them, but I mean, that's kind of the whole.
It's contact. And that's one of the things that I think, and I always think about that all the time, is that I try to meet everybody, because every contact I make, I give them a different view of farming. I give them a different view of what a farmer looks like, but I also am able to plant those seeds of how important what I do to them.
Not just in the world, but to you specifically, and why to you it's important.
Exactly, to each one of them. And yes, it is time consuming. But every time we interact with another person, we create this amazing web that will continually spread, because they will mention because of something you said or something. And with that message spread. It's just so important to make that extra. But also when you make that extra effort, you think, what more them important? And then when they do post a review about your hip, they'll say, oh, I met this wonderful rancher, and this is what he does, and these are the things he does, and you should go to this place because of what.
We have the advantage of living here on the property, which makes it a lot easier, because I would be certainly less inclined to have to drive to meet a guest, and time consuming, financially, that doesn't, that starts to add up and takes time out of your life. So that does make it a lot more difficult if you've got to really go out of your way to do it. And it's, we've had these discussions even with our Harvest Host and our hip camp, because they don't pay much. I mean, $30 a night for hip camp, so how much time can you afford financially to spend with them?
Right.
I mean, everything that she talks about is spot on, because it does come back to you, but at the same time, it's still time out of your day. So
if somebody's going to stay 2 or 3 nights, I'm probably going to go out and meet them. I had one that wanted to stay for a week. She ended up leaving after the 3rd day because she had a family emergency back home. And we were communicating beforehand, and like she asked me to come down and help her park and level her camper because she'd never pulled a trailer before. And then she was leaving. She asked, when she left, she told me, she says, "Thanks for putting it to where I could get back out by myself."
One thing Lynette is really good at is the people that come here. If she includes them in a farm experience, the little kids get to go gather eggs or feed a bottle lamb. That's just 5 stars. I mean, that's an instant good review, but they'll say what they did, and then the next people that come, they'll read that review. Because a lot of these people read reviews, so
Yeah.
when they see that, they say, "Hey, we saw something about gathering eggs. Can our kids gather eggs?" And so that really helps pull people. She does a really good job in her advertising. People when they sign up, can we see Leonard? Can we meet the dogs or the bottle lambs? And they've either read it in the reviews or in her advertising. So a lot of them, they come here for this purpose of reconnecting, but they've already, before they get here, feel like they've met one or two of the characters on the farm, and they're already asking questions
That's
about,
cool.
we want to meet this animal.
So you guys are like, you're kind of making it personal for them before they even get here by using your animals' names. And that's a little thing to think about, but that could be kind of a big deal, telling your story with some character in it so that when people get here, they already feel like they're part of the story.
And I don't know, initially, do you warn them a little about Lucy up front? That Lucy meets them?
No, that's my first talk.
Okay.
That's my first talk.
Well,
when I go and meet them.
A couple of years ago, we had a bottle lamb that got a little confused and started to identify as dog and thought Lucy was its mom.
Okay.
And it got to where it followed Lucy everywhere. And Lucy is she's the first one to meet you. She hears you when you turn off the highway. She's already coming up the driveway barking and hair up. And the lamb would be following her trying to bark. I mean, and so that became an instant hit with all of the guests. So it was Lucy and Peanut, the lamb that identified as dog. And we had probably for a year after Peanut was gone, people coming asking about Lucy and Peanut, because so many reviews got posted and so many pictures got taken of
Animal
Lucy
friends,
and
man.
Peanut and posted on Facebook or Instagram, and not just in the reviews. So there's little things like that. There was a complete accident, but if you find things like that really, Peanut probably made us quite a bit of money.
I'm so excited. I'm so glad you told that story because I think about all the silly little things that have happened at our house that are just a silly thing that happens in the day of the life of us.
Like the chicken that thought it was a guinea.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have a barred rock that lives with the guineas because, why? Why would that be? Why would the guineas be? They look the same. They just don't know.
And guineas hate chickens, so.
They don't hate the barred rocks, I guess, because they match.
Oh, well, that would look.
They don't. You can't, if you see it from far enough away, you can't tell. And there was also a silver lace Wyandotte in there, and there was never any brown chickens with the guineas. It was just the black and white chickens. But there's always weird things that happen that we talk about and laugh about that you don't think about. That sharing that with somebody would be great. All the silly things we name our animals. Just those stories alone are pretty hilarious sometimes.
They do. They love that. They love all those parts. They want to know why that animal was that.
Yes.
I think we're probably getting to a point where we're going to be able to raise our rent in May because of lambs and baby calves. People are they're asking, when can we come see the babies? Well, if they're going to ask to come see the babies,
yep,
they're going to pay to come see the babies.
Yeah, that's in demand.
And Lynette took her 2 cousins out. They were 7 and 10. I just happened to see a ewe laying down, and I come down and told Lynette when they were here once staying. They come a couple times a year, and Lynette took them up, and they got to see one actually being born. From a close distance. Exactly, that's something they'll never forget. That.
Or I can just imagine. Were these city kids?
Mm-hmm.
Olathe.
Were their parents with them?
Mm-hmm.
How horrified were their parents at what they were seeing?
No, they were just really curious. They asked lots of questions because, just the whole birthing process, right? From the ewe, from her just spinning and pawing and, from the very beginning, very near.
Well, and the girl is, I could see her as a vet or a zookeeper. So she's just an animal person to begin with. So this was a really big moment for her from that aspect of furthering her passion and desire to be around animals.
Yeah, and of course it was born on the driveway, so that meant that the little lambs had to be moved.
So they got to carry
Yeah,
them.
so they got to carry the little lambs. So yeah, they got a first-hand experience of start to finish.
Something those kids are not going to forget for a very long time.
To see life coming on.
Great stuff. That's a good place to start wrapping up. You got anything else, Gail, Lynette?
Do you have any events on the farm coming up?
Oh.
I think you do. I remember.
So we actually have a lady coming, and she's going to do astrology and numerology. So for the new year of 2024, she's going to predict kind of a cool event.
Yeah,
we're really excited about that one. Yep, her name is Catherine Andrews.
She's written several books.
Yep, she's written several books, and yeah, that'll be kind of a cool event, and that's going to be February 8th, right? February 8th, 9th, 10th, somewhere in that area. So yeah, on a Saturday and a Sunday, and yeah, you can register for that.
Website, Fuller Field School? Fuller Farm?
No, it's, oh, yeah. Yeah, you haven't posted those flyers yet then.
Not on
Field
the,
School.
I didn't know I was supposed to on the website. My bad. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
maybe
Eventually,
it will be on the
then
website.
we'll be able to register them at
Yeah.
Fuller Field School, yeah?
Okay.
Well, yeah, there'll be the flyers will be there, which will show you the link.
That sounds
That's
like
only that in the field school is only 2 events we got officially planned so far, right?
When does field school registration start?
Oh, sorry.
I was going to tell you to turn that off.
I know. You didn't tell me to.
sometimes that happens. Every once in a while, I forget to put mine on mute too. So before we get out of here today, field school, you said that was coming up October 3rd and 4th. So where will people be able to find out information and roughly when?
Fullerfieldschool.com. There will also obviously be posts on Facebook, etc. I assume we'll probably open registration after the first of the year, get through the holidays and get everything up and running. Probably have it going then.
And like, if you're coming to the field school, tent camping in Gail's yard. It's well, as my dad would say, it's a happening, man. It's a happening.
Yeah, it's been really fun. Since we moved here, we moved here in the first summer was 20 with COVID, and that just changed everything. And we were adamant we were going to host our workshop that year. So we moved it outside and we made it happen. And it was such a hit. People just literally begged us, please, no more PowerPoints. So we've now been outside for 4 years, 4 schools. And so, yeah, now we allow, I guess back up, the downside of moving to Severy is the overnight accommodations are a little more difficult than they were in Emporia. So we've added anybody that wants to come and camp out can come and camp out for $25 a night. And so the night before the field school, it's not uncommon to have 20, 30, 40 people sleeping on the farm.
Playing music around the campfire,
Playing
singing
music
about
around a
earthworms.
campfire, yep, singing about earthworms, and we have community meals, and it's becoming almost a festival type. Really fun atmosphere. It's just really added to it, having the people staying here.
Well, maybe instead of Fuller Field School, it'll become the Fuller Regeneration Festival.
Yeah.
We're getting,
Yeah.
It seems like that too. And then, food. So everything's based around food, and really from local farmers, from people who know how.
Well, and we bring in chefs to prepare it, so that makes it fun.
Bring in some very passionate chefs who do a beautiful job with it. Then it's community. You get what we provide for the people that come to Fuller Fields is a community. And it's almost instant because everybody that comes just all have something in common with them. With that, they join in, they help us wash dishes, they help prepare food sometimes when the chefs need a couple extra hands. And, there's the sense of community. That's full.
It's really helped take a load off of us. It's very difficult for this control freak because when you're the host, and everybody else is supposed to stay out of the way. Well, you kill yourself working for 2 days so that everybody else can have fun. And so it was difficult for me when people would ask to do something to let them. But Charles really hammered that home when he spoke here 2 years ago is, paying it forward and the gift economy. And so I relaxed after that. And you walk in here now at 6 o'clock in the morning on the day of the field school, and there's somebody at the sink doing dishes, and the coffee's already percolating. And
It's amazing what happens when you let it.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're not upset. I mean,
No,
so
they're
why?
happy to help. And just like
Exactly.
you would be happy to help.
Exactly.
Leaving that field school when Charles was here, I remember driving out of your place that morning, afternoon, whenever we left, and saying to Brian, I have goosebumps here because the whole energy of the group of people that was here was just unbelievable.
Charles had the same.
He was, I mean, he did his presentation without shoes on, which was super cool.
Yep.
But by the time he was done, I had my shoes off, and I know at least 2 or 3 other people did too, and I thought it was pretty neat.
When we brought Charles in, we were told by a couple of his friends that he will be a fantastic speaker. People will be blown away, but he will show up, he will give his presentation, he'll go back to his room because that's just Charles. He doesn't care for social events. He was in the middle of every conversation here. I tell people, I really think he only showed up out of morbid curiosity of why a farmer in Kansas wanted to listen to him. And I really think that's the only reason he came, and he did not get what he came for.
He was magical here. It was wonderful
Yep.
to be here while he was here, and it was so cool. So cool.
What I remember about that was he kind of started off, and he kind of admitted that he started off on the back foot because it's like, I didn't know what to expect coming here, and this is completely different than what I had in mind. So just bear with me as I gather my thoughts. And I thought, wow. And then I looked down and I noticed he wasn't wearing shoes, and I really started to pay attention. And the article that he wrote afterwards about some of his preconceptions before coming to Kansas and about meeting some of the people here, he didn't mention anybody by name. I think maybe except you guys, but he didn't mention anybody else by name. And it's been a while since I've read it, but it was just incredible. Like, he was just blown away that there's actually people that care about the food and the environment and the microbes and the nutrient and the water cycling and understand how it all fits together.
And care about each other without talking politics and religion. I think he was as blown away as anybody. And that's something this school it's taken on a life of its own. And the speakers show up. We have a really difficult time explaining to them what they're getting themselves into. And that's, he was a perfect example. And then they show up and they're like, oh my God.
He was so interesting to see speak because he's such a patient speaker, and he's confident in his patience. So when he needed to take time to gather his thoughts, he just did that. And it was really cool to see how uncomfortable it made people at first. And by the end of the conversation, how different that was. I think that really made an impression on you, on being okay, taking a minute to gather your thoughts in the middle of a conversation, not having to fill every...
Yeah, I think it's just part of our lifestyle anymore, is along with everything else, fast, cheap, and easy, is dead air is no longer allowed. Dead air is wonderful. It gives everybody a time to think and digest. And
I could see why he wouldn't
okay.
have been looking forward to the social aspect of the thing. When you show up to a lot of social things, it's all about pretenses. And I think the reason that I left here with goosebumps is because it was real. There was you guys didn't put on some thing, with some, agenda. It was a group of people who the purpose was to gather and be close and learn and love each other. And
I think that's how we were lucky enough to draw, Naisha for next year. Is she's in such high demand, but our initial phone call with her, she wanted to know what we expected from her, and we said, "You just show up and do what you want to do. You can talk about anything you want." And any speaker today, it's you're given a
Like,
topic
what?
and you're given an hour, and you're told
All these constraints.
this is what you can. We've never been that way. We want our speakers involved in the agenda, and with her, we know how speaking has become a job, and we just want her to come and have fun, and we've just turned her loose, and she just blew up. We were on Zoom, and you could just see her face light up, and the wheels were already.
Well, that's when you get the best
spinning.
of people, is when
Yeah.
you let them do what they're good at.
Yeah.
And the other thing we told her is we promised to feed her well, and we're going to house her right on the farm. You should have seen her light up.
Like, I don't have to get a hotel.
I don't have to go anywhere. I get to just walk out the door and speak right there on the lawn. And we're like, yeah, right there. And she's like, oh my God, this sounds like this is going to be amazing. And it will be. It will be absolutely amazing. And she is a Kansas girl,
Yeah. She
which
grew
is
up in
even
Wichita.
cool.
Very cool.
Yep. So she's returning home.
Very cool. All right. Where can we find you on the internet besides fullerfieldschool.com?
Airbnb.
Oh, yeah. On Airbnb, it's under Flint Hills Premier Getaway. And that's also on VRBO. Hip Camp. Also, you just type in Severy, Kansas, and
Same with Harvest Host.
same with Harvest Host.
And the Airbnb is also on our website at fullerfieldschool.com. And it talks about getaways, so you can also go on there to find a way to come see us.
I have a very short list of saved properties on Airbnb. One of them is yours. And we've had this idea for a while, is to make a fake account under somebody else's name on Airbnb and book it and just show up.
Have you guys ever had anybody just like show up that you didn't expect that you knew? Now you've ruined it, Brian. Great.
I don't think so. I don't think we've ever. Nobody.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Fun
It'd be
idea.
amazing. We love it. We love when people come to see us.
Fun idea.
And that's
There's
been the nice thing
there
about
would-
having the Airbnb.
There could be a little risk with that, in that we might not be here.
Yeah.
If John Doe's coming to spend the weekend, and we
They got
get other
plans already.
It's like, I know this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's the instruction for check-in.
There you go. Good luck. Good
Yeah.
luck.
We had a couple signed up for Hip Camp a year or so ago. We didn't know them from Adam, but they signed up for Hip Camp, and I think they ordered some meat and eggs or something and a firewood bundle, which is pretty typical. And we were gone that weekend, and come to find out, they signed up for field school, and they were wanting to become farmers, and they come here for that weekend to meet us.
Oh no.
So they got to meet the farm sitter.
Yeah. But they didn't. We've since become friends. But yeah,
You know, we got to have a life off the farm. We've got to all have time to be able to get away from the farm, just to get away from some of the stress and the decisions and, oh man, I need to go fix that gate. Oh, I've got to tighten that wire up. Maybe we need to go doctor that sheep. Sometimes it's nice just to be like, we need to leave for 2 days. Hopefully everything will be alive when we get back.
yeah, it's just extremely important and very difficult for me, because I don't care how beautiful your farm is and how much you love doing it. It's still that stress of the list, that everything that has to be done that day and what you think has to be done that day. And yeah,
Okay,
you
Gail,
gotta get-
hypothetically, if you went to someone else's farm to stay on their farm,
not if, that's what we do.
okay, when you do that, do you like look at other people's gates and be like, man, I might stretch up that wire, I'd hang that gate a little bit better.
No, I
Well,
don't.
that's like, no, I don't have time for
I
that
don't-
crap.
I never look at it
I
like
think
that.
we see, or I see that, but I don't. That's not what I think. But when I go to other people's farms, I ask if I can go do chores.
just to learn their place and to spend time
It's
with
a
them.
little bit of, you get to see the backside of the farm or the inside of the farm, but you also get to see, okay, maybe they do things just a tad differently that what can I bring back to my place?
I never thought about using this sort of container for a feed bucket.
Exactly. And I guess feeding their animals, if there's one dead, so what? It's not mine.
It's not the same kind of stress.
So there's not, it's not the same kind of stress, and they're probably with you, so you're having a really good conversation while you're doing it,
and maybe they're even going to open the gates for you.
Yeah. Yep.
We like to go to other people's farms.
We've done that a lot.
We love to see what they do and how to do it.
And there was the first time I spent the night at Gabe's, though, he ended up in the emergency room the night before grass-fed exchange, and so I ended up doing chores all right.
Not because you wanted to.
Not the way I wanted to. That was the one time it wasn't very fun.
Sometimes you got to take the good with the bad, and
Yep.
that's what it's like in agriculture. We don't get a lot of choice. The only choice we have is how we choose to internalize it and how we choose to deal with it.
Exactly.
All right. It's a great place to end. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a lot of fun.
Bye.
All right, gang. See you next week.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. We'd also love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review if you haven't already. And don't forget to check out the Q&A and the polls on Spotify. Your support helps us bring more enlightening conversations and fresh stories from the world of farming and ranching. Thank you for listening to Ranching Reboot, your favorite regenerative ag podcast.